You're listening to the Spark Radio Network.
All right, guys, we're ready for our four-season sunroom, and Daddy's gonna get a rec room with refreshments.
Oh, no. We'll be sleeping under the stars.
Mom, what about the one with, the fun?
Nice try, little bro. It's a gym. My gym.
Hey, Grandma's getting her Four Seasons garden room. Weather tight and still like being outdoors.
Maybe a living room. Oh, no, wait. A family hub.
Yeah! No matter what the budget, the season, or the climate, Four Seasons Sunrooms let you and your family enjoy the outdoors inside. Call now to receive your free, no-obligation brochure from the premier manufacturer of sunrooms since 1975.
More reasons for Four Seasons now.
To find out more, call toll-free 800-928-7007. That's 800-928-7007. Call 800-928-7007 today.
Wake up, America. I think I got something to say to you. I say this every week. I love the United States of America, and I want you to love the United States of America too. Office Hours with Dr. A is not a safe space. So enter at your own risk. You will be exposed to the truth, and I will endure the consequences. Again, rest assured, I will not try to put my brain into your head. I will, however, motivate you to think and to use the analytical part of your brain that very few people want to use because it requires actual effort, it requires actual work.
You've reached the office of Dr. Randy Arrington. Please have a seat, and the doctor will be with you in just a moment.
Hey, good morning, everybody out there in Radio Land. This is Dr. A, and on the line with me is Lou Esposito. Of course, those of you that listen, the three of you that listen, she's my producer, my sidekick, and I, of course, have given her the honorary tactical call sign of Wench. Why? Because she doesn't take crap from anybody. Lou, are you there?
Oh, yeah. I am here.
Excellent. Excellent.
How are you?
I'm raring to go today because of something that's been happening, has transpired since January 12th. And even though the topic of Office Hours with Dr. A is sheep, wolves, and sheepdog, my producer, Wench, will not be able to handle me or throttle me back on this morning's broadcast. I will be taking my time and utilizing all of the appropriate segues to discuss politics in America from a unique perspective, Dr. Ray's perspective of speaking the truth. Lou, what a revolutionary concept. What do you think about that?
I think if you think that I'm not going to handle you during any broadcast, you're sadly mistaken. But otherwise, I agree with you.
So you thought the revolutionary concept was not speaking the truth. You thought it was you not being able to handle me, and then that was the revolutionary concept.
I'm your producer. It's my job.
All right. Well, I am going to speak the truth and endure those inevitable consequences that seem to always come my way. So here goes, people. Listen closely to Dr. Ray. Back in November 1979, a new phrase was introduced into our national lexicon. That phrase, of course, was American hostages. On January 12th of this year, just hours before Barack Hussein Obama was to deliver his, thank God, final State of the Union address to a joint session of the Congress, Iran took 10 more American hostages. Now, for me personally, it was like deja vu all over again, because I, as a young naval aviator, I was involved in the Naval Aviation Expeditionary Force that was sent to respond to that first Iranian hostage crisis. The USS Ranger, a CV-61, the carrier that I was attached to at the time, that Air Wing 2, I believe it was, spent 181 days at sea, continuous days at sea. In fact, at that time, it set the record for continuous days at sea without a port call. I was part of that. Honored and privileged to be, by the way. We were out there for the 181 days waiting patiently for President Jimmy Carter, a Naval Academy graduate, to make the bold decision that for some reason, Lou, he just never could quite bring himself to make. Now, Lou, let me ask you this analytical question. Why does Iran only take American hostages when we have a weak, coward, Democratic Party commander-in-chief who is sashaying around inside the White House? Why is that, Lou?
Yes.
I
think the word sachet really kind of covers it.
Would they, now I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question. Would they have done this with a Ronald Reagan or a Ronald Reagan type?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The Russians couldn't even keep the wall up in Berlin under, sure, he wasn't actually president when it finally, when the Iron Curtain finally fell, but everybody knows it was his work that made it fall.
Right. It's an interesting analytical concept you introduced there. Things that actually happen, the commander-in-chief, the president who is responsible for that actually coming to fruition, usually aren't in office when it happens.
Yeah, very often. And with the economy as well. Right. And that's true of the economy as well.
What do you think would happen? We mentioned this on your wonderful show last Thursday. What do you think would happen if Iran had seized a couple of those Riverine-type boats from Putin's Russian Navy? What would Putin have done?
He's ready to nuke somebody as it is. He's got he seems to have his thumb poised on the button and is like dying to push it. So there's no telling what would have happened to Iran, except that they wouldn't do it to Putin because they're Putin's friend.
We just mentioned Ronald Reagan, his response to that Iranian hostage crisis. By the way, let me just say this. As a young 25-year-old naval aviator involved in that expeditionary force during the Iranian hostage crisis on the carrier USS Ranger, flying those missions in that environment, hostile environment, I was a Democrat, a registered Democrat. Of course, if you're not a Democrat or if you're not a liberal when you're young, you've got no heart. If you're not, conservative when you get older, you got no brain.
I'm completely heartless then.
Yeah, well,
because I've never in my life been a Democrat.
Well, you've learned. You've learned what the truth is.
Winston
Churchill taught us that.
Yeah.
As did other great leaders from our motherland of Great Britain. So I mentioned Ronald Reagan. He's a hero of yours, as he is for many people.
Yeah.
And I mentioned Ronald Reagan type. I said, if a Ronald Reagan type was in the White House, do you think, now I'm about ready, I'm very close, and you know this, so does Stacey and JD, Dr. Ray is very close to making his official endorsement for the GOP candidate that I would like to see win the nomination. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm close. Now here's my question to you. Do you see any Ronald Reagan types in that field that's been dwindled down to 11? Do you see any Ronald Reagan types?
I see two that can play Reagan. If they, and I mean, Reagan was an actor, so he was playing a role to a great extent, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that, especially in foreign policy and national security and in geopolitics. You have to play a role. That's what it's all about, is playing the tough guy. Yeah, I see two. Okay.
And you're right about that, playing the role. Kennedy taught us this. The Democrat that he was sort of a right-leaning liberal. If you look at his policies, he would be shunned today, I think, in the new communist Marxist Democratic Party. That Mrs. Clinton and Debbie Wasserman Schultz can't tell us the difference between a communist and a Democrat today. They can't. That's because there is none. But he taught us that we can make mistakes in policy in the United States as far as domestic policy. Usually the consequence there is we don't get reelected. But Kennedy said, you know what? If we make mistakes in foreign policy, that gets Americans killed, and that's where I come into play. And all those wolves out there better be careful, because there are sheepdogs that are going to hunt you down. And we're going to talk about that starting in a minute. But when I actually saw that young captain, he was probably a lieutenant, maybe a lieutenant commander, I think he was a lieutenant, giving his coerced, under duress confession that, yes, it's our fault, we apologize. I knew he was under duress from my SEER training, which we talked about on your show Thursday night, and I had to pull over. when I actually saw that, because I couldn't drive anymore. I had to sit there and stew for a little while because I know what that kid was going through, and it upset me. I almost used the word piss, but I know we're on radio, but it upset me. So there are a couple of guys there I think that would assume the Reagan role, if you will, and be a hard line type of conservative as far as with America's national security that's in that field. I really believe that. But these Democrats, they don't get it. And I just tweeted out something on my account, and it's getting lots of play on Twitter. I said, do you know how to tell when a liberal is lying? And here's my advice to you. Their lips are moving, their keyboard is moving, or their teleprompter is moving. You know what, Lou? Even Satan himself mixes in some little tidbits of truth when he is lying. So I want you to understand this. Before we get into sheep, wolves, and sheepdogs, you got to trust me on this one subject. We as human beings are what we do repeatedly. And excellence in human behavior is not an act. Excellence in human behavior is a habit. It's habitual. And that's why we always talk about speaking the truth and then enduring the consequences. Mrs. Clinton is a habitual liar, as is the President of the United States that's in the White House right now, because they do it over and over and over. They do it so much that I'm not sure that I think they can tell most of their lies, Lou, and their power depends on deception, deceiving 51% of the people into believing what they're telling them, those lies that they're telling them are true. And I think they know that most of them are not true, but then I think also because of their affliction, a pathological liar and sociopath, that they sometimes can't tell the difference between the truth and what's, for them, lying reality. Mrs. Clinton, I've mentioned this before, Mrs. Clinton cannot be cured by any known pharmaceutical, psychological, or beads and rattles remedy. She is cooked for her life. She should not be entrusted with any power whatsoever, Lou. And I firmly believe that. Today, we're going to talk about what type of individuals we have in society and what type of individual I'm hoping that you will choose to be. Because you know what, Lou? The United States is in a crisis situation as we speak. There are several different brand names of totalitarianism out there that are engaging in combat and war, have declared war against us, and we're getting it from all fronts. And the sooner the people realize that, maybe the sooner they can adopt a type of a mentality and behavioral dynamic that will help save the United States of America. Our founding fathers knew this. They said that it may come to fruition where you get somebody in the seat of power that their avarice and their greed for power makes them go in the direction of tyranny and despotism. And we have that right now. We have to fight that off tooth and nail. So today's topic, if you're ready, it comes from my good friend from the War College, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. And it's about sheep, wolves, and sheepdogs. Some of you have probably seen this mantra out there, maybe even read his article. But let's talk about this concept for human nature, human behavior. Honor and being honorable never grows old. Why? Well, honor rejoices with the heart of age as we grow. It does so because honor is, in the final analysis, about courageously defending those noble and worthy things that deserve protection, deserve defending, even, Lou, if it comes at a high personal cost. Now, in our time, that may mean things like social disapproval, public scorn, Twitter trolls harassing us, as you're well aware of, as are JD and Stacy and Diane and Jody and the rest of them.
Very familiar.
Are you familiar with that?
I'm very familiar with that, yes.
Personal hardship, persecution, or as always, it might even require that we end up sacrificing our own lives, so even death itself. But in the end, these questions remain and should be answered. What is worth defending, Lou? What is worth dying for? maybe better yet, what is worth living for?
Anything
Now,
worth living for is worth dying for.
is that, I think I need to see that sheepskin from Meredith. I think you're got a higher degree than just that bachelor's degree. It was very astute. I like that. Most of the people in the United States of American society, most of us are sheep. What do I mean by that? They are kind and gentle. They are productive creatures. How do you like that adjective, creatures? They are productive creatures. I'm here close to Atlanta. I'm in Peachtree City right now, training the Air Force guys, and they have this little TV show they produce here. It's gone viral. It's called The Walking Dead. A couple of my church-going friends are what they call walkers.
That's a little more than a little television show. That is a
is it?
Yeah. That's Walking Dead is pretty much a phenomenon, and it's the best zombie show I've ever seen. Quite frankly,
they paint them up. They put them in the makeup chair for hours. I've seen pictures of her. She's a beautiful young woman and got a nice little family there at church, and they paint her up and make her look like one of those dead people walking around, zombies, and you can't even recognize her. But it's they got zombie Walking Dead stores here in Sonoya, Georgia, and a cafe. Kind of fun little dynamic. But so these sheep that we're talking about, they're kind and gentle, productive creatures who can only hurt one another by accident. Now this is true. You got to remember, if you're a fan of statistics, the murder rate is about 6 per 100,000 per year. And the aggravated assault rate is about 4 per 1,000 per year. So, and it's actually going down according to the FBI statistics. What that means is, those two statistics, and what those mean is the vast majority of Americans are not inclined to hurt one another. Some estimates say that 2 million Americans are victims of violent crimes every year. This is a tragic, staggering number. Perhaps it's close to an all-time record in this country for a rate of violent criminal activity. But there are about 320 million of us Americans, which means that the odds of being a victim of violent crime is considerably less than 1 in 100 in any given year. Furthermore, since many violent crimes are committed by repeat offenders engaging in recidivism, the actual number of violent citizens is more than likely considerably less than that 2 million figure we just looked at. Thus, there's a paradox, and we must grasp both ends of this paradoxical situation. Lou, we may well be in the most violent times in history, but violence is still remarkably rare, even though ISIS and ISIL and Daesh and whoever else you want to talk about want to change that subject for us. This is because most American citizens, again, are kind, decent people who are not capable of hurting each other except by accident or under some form of extreme provocation. They are indeed sheep, tantamount to sheep. Now, I don't mean anything negative by calling some of my fellow citizens sheep. To me, it's like the pretty blue robin's egg in the nest that I used to climb up when I was a kid in Connecticut, when my dad was a submarine officer during the Cuban Missile Crisis. I'd climb up in the trees and look at these little blue robin's eggs and then hopefully shimmy down and not fall down. I remember that. But inside of that robin's egg, it's sort of soft and gooey, but someday that mass will grow into something wonderful. But that robin's egg cannot survive without its hard blue shell and the protection that that shell provides to it on the outside. Now, police officers, soldiers, I would call first responders, firemen and EMT guys, and other warriors are tantamount, are like that shell in the robin's egg. And someday the civilization, the society of individuals that they protect, will grow into something wonderful, come to fruition. This is our youngsters. For now, though, they need warriors to protect them from Hulu, from the predators. And there are indeed many, many predators out there that exist. I don't think people really realize that, or if they don't, they put their heads in the sand like ostriches and don't want to deal with it. So now, in this example we're talking about here, there are the wolves. And those wolves out in society feed on the sheep without mercy. Do you believe, Lou, that there are wolves out there who will feed on the flock without mercy? Do you believe that?
Absolutely. That's what wolves do.
Can you quickly name one wolf for me?
Hillary Clinton will feed on the sheep without mercy, and she does.
Oh, I
She's
love
a
you
wolf.
as a producer because you're so astute. And
Yeah,
you know exactly where I want you to go.
She is a wolf, and the problem is, and you just alluded to the problem, is that there are so many sheep. There are more sheep than there are wolves or sheepdog. Now, we've got a reading for it, and I'm only interrupting you because it's time to go to break, and we have a reading from the Book of Beaker this week.
This is a 4-part series anyway, right? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, as long as it takes you, Doc.
Okay.
We have a reading from the Book of Beaker. It's a little bit long, but it fits in so well with this topic. And just listen to it, because it's why we have so many sheep and not enough sheepdogs. Then we're going to cut to a break, and we'll be back, and you can rest your voice for a little bit, Doc.
All right.
All right, be right back.
A reading from the Book of Beaker, 2 Testicles, verses 1 through 20. In the beginning, man had stones, and the Lord looked upon his creation and saw that it was good. Then the Lord said, Go forth into the world I have made for thee, and act not like a little bitch, but solveth thine own problems without drama. And man said, O heavenly Father, we would never act as the little bitch doth act, for thou hast made us strong and true. And so for 7 times 7 generations man heeded the word of God, and flourished in the paradise created for them. When difficulties arose, man grasped his stones in his non-dominant hand, and with his free hand he made a fist, and shook it in defiance of that which plagued him, shouting, Come and get thee some, for I am man. And the women would stand beside their men, screaming into the formless black night, Though my stones are internal, they too are made of brass. Together the children of God tamed which was set before them. Every hardship was endured and eventually made to serve them in some fashion. Because even failure could be learned from, once acceptance of mistakes was acknowledged. Thus, in time, all could be overcome. For the glory and the power of the divine right of stones proved to be a greater blessing when dealing with the wilderness within than the wilderness without. And the children of God grew strong, and in their strength they grew arrogant, and in their arrogance they grew blind. For in this blindness a great stupid swept across the lands of men. Unopposed it engulfed the halls of academia, then the arts and entertainment, until it became so pervasive it became ubiquitous. Your stones are offensive, the great stupid whispered, and mankind believed. Reality is subjective. Personal accountability is a lie. Blame is a construct of the cis-normative racist patriarchal hegemony. Fairness and equality must be achieved by any means necessary. Everybody gets a trophy. And with this, mankind set aside their stones as individuals and nations and placed them in a designated safe space. No more would man be held accountable for his failures. No more would man grow stronger from embracing adversity. Now, for the sake of inclusivity, man who once stood so tall would now just bend over. And forsaking the God of their fathers, man forgot their promise and became a little bitch. The Lord God then looked upon his creation and wept. This has been a reading from the book of Beaker.
I looked all over, so how can it be? Here comes the wrecking ball, swinging at me.
K98 Talk is continuing to expand its lineup. This means we are expanding our advertising base. Whether you're a startup trying to push through to the next level or an established business trying to supplement your advertising budget, web-based advertising is a solid investment. Thanks to Talk's newest partnership with TuneIn Radio and instant access to our sister station, K98 FM, we give you worldwide access at a reasonable cost. Interested parties should email us at advertise@k98talk.org.
They know I mean well, and smiling is hell if they try. They open their mouths, only hatred spews out with their lies.
And our new bumpers are compliments of Tennessee Jed. He has a new CD on iTunes called Stronger. I think that there's only one song available. The rest of them will be available at the end of the month. Dr. A.
I've got an electric guitar, a Les Paul, very expensive one, and I've got a really nice acoustic guitar that I kind of fiddle around with. I wish I could play it. That guy's a great guitarist. That's really nice.
He's a fabulous guitarist. He composes all the music, all the different pieces, and he writes everything. He's phenomenally talented, and he's a friend of mine, so I'm a little bit biased. However, that's what you can do when you have a radio show. You can play readings and music from your friends like we just did. Now, that reading from the Book of Beaker was perfect because I think that he really encapsulates kind of how we got to this place where we have so many freaking sheep and not enough sheepdogs.
And he's a sheepdog. He's an ex-military guy, if I'm not mistaken.
He's definitely a sheepdog. He's a sweetheart, but when it's time to be a sheepdog, he's a sheepdog.
You know, let's get back to this little thing we're talking about. I asked you the question, do you believe there are wolves out there who will feed on that flock of sheep without mercy? Trust me on this one subject. You better believe it, people. There are evil men and women in this world. I'm not a sexist. I believe that they're both. And they're capable of evil deeds. The moment you forget that, people, or pretend that it's not true, you have just become a sheep. And you know what? There's no safety in denial. Now, the third the part of this is there are the sheepdogs. And I want you to know Dr. A is a sheepdog. I spent the vast majority of my adult life serving the United States of America as a naval aviator and as an interceptor pilot for U.S. Customs, protecting the United States of America and her people against all sorts of threats. I live to protect the flock and to confront and eventually defeat the wolf. If you have no capacity for violence, then you are a healthy, productive citizen. You're a sheep. If you have a capacity for violence, and how should I put this? No empathy for your fellow citizens, then you have identified or defined yourself as an aggressive sociopath. You have identified yourself as a wolf. But Lou, what if you have a capacity for violence correlated with a deep love and respect for your fellow citizens? What do you have then? Well, you have a sheepdog. You have a warrior, someone who is consciously, purposefully walking along the hero's path. Someone who can walk into the heart of darkness, into that universal human phobia, and walk out of it unscathed. Now, let me expand on this model of the sheep, wolves, and sheepdogs for a second here. We know that the sheep live in denial. That's what makes them sheep. They do not want to believe that there is actual evil out there in the world. They can accept the fact that fires can happen, which is why they want to have fire extinguishers, fire alarms, fire exits, and fire sprinklers throughout their children's schools. But many of those same people are outraged at the very idea, the very notion of putting an armed police officer, security officer, on the grounds inside their child's school. You know what, Lou? Our children are thousands of times more likely to be killed or seriously injured by school violence than by a fire. But the sheep's only response to the possibility of violence is denial. The idea of someone waltzing in, coming in to kill or harm their child is just too hard of a concept to accept. And so they choose the path of refutation. They choose the path of denial. They select the path of least resistance. Now, the sheep generally do not like the sheepdog. You know why, Lou? Because to them, the sheepdog, he or she looks a lot like a wolf. They have fangs. They have the capacity for violence. The difference, however, is that the sheepdog must not, cannot, and will not ever, ever, ever harm the sheep. Any sheepdog who intentionally harms the lowliest little lamb in our society will be severely punished and removed. The world cannot work any other way, at least not in our constitutional, democratic, representative democracy, the republic that we have. Still, that sheepdog disturbs the sheep. He or she is a constant reminder that, you know what, there are wolves out there in our land. They would prefer that he didn't tell them where to go. They would prefer that the wolf or the sheepdog didn't tell them you have to get this traffic ticket because you've gone too fast to that intersection. Or they don't want to see them standing at the ready wearing camouflage fatigues in our airports holding their M16. The sheep would much rather have the sheepdog just simply cash in their fangs, spray paint themselves white, and go, bah. Now that is until the wolf shows up at their door. When that happens, then the entire flock tries desperately to hide behind one lonely, courageous sheepdog. As an example, the students, the victims at Columbine High School were big, tough high school students. And under ordinary circumstances, they would not have had the time of day for a police officer or a naval aviator wearing his much coveted wings of gold. I've been there. I've done it. I've done career days at schools where I've talked about becoming a naval aviator, and some of the kids just loved it. They wanted to come ask me questions. Some of them looked at me like I just killed their mother with disdain. When I trained my Air Force guys at flight safety. I want to train them to fly this airplane that they use in the war, keep them alive, keep them safe, let them make them understand the systems and what they can and can't do with the airplane. But as a retired naval aviator, I also want to teach them about life and how to be a man, how to be a woman, courageous woman. Now, I don't know how to be a woman. Stacy's going to probably laugh if you're saying that. But how to be a courageous...
Yeah, you'll hear about that later.
Courageous sheepdog. Teach them about life. Because I'm a dad, too. I got 5 kids, so I feel that I have to do that. But I teach them, there are people out there, and they when they come to train with me, they train in their flight suits, which I wish I could still put my flight suit on every day. But I trained them. I said, you don't know this, but there are people out there that see you wearing that flight suit who hate your guts, and you don't even know it. They'll shake your hand, thank you for your service, give you a nice phony smile, and then when you turn their back, they want to stab you like you can't believe with words, rhetoric, which is that's a nice segue to an upcoming 2-part show we're going to do about words and wordsmiths and cowards. We're going to do that in a couple of weeks, I think. But these kids hadn't not the time of day for those police officers. Now they weren't bad children. They weren't bad high school kids. They just didn't have anything nice to say to a cop. But when their school was under attack, active attack, and SWAT teams were going in, clearing the rooms, room by room, hallway by hallway, those officers had to physically peel those clinging, sobbing children off of them. Lou, this is how the little lambs feel about their sheepdog when that wolf is knocking at their door. Look at what happened in the aftermath of September 11, 2001, when that wolf pounded very hard at our door. The greatest single sneak attack in the history of the United States. I think 2 times or maybe 2.5 times the amount of life lost in Manhattan. Those 2 buildings came tumbling down at the hands of Islamic terrorists and people that are waging war against us, as happened when the Japanese attacked us at Pearl Harbor. Do you remember, in the aftermath of September 11th, how America, more than ever before, in my humble opinion, felt differently for the time being, a temporary time being, about their law enforcement officers, their military personnel, and their firefighters and first responders? Lou, can you recall how many times you heard the word hero? Can you remember that? Hero, hero, hero. I do.
Yeah, when I was younger, much more than now.
What's interesting about that is, to do a segue here, is I was teaching at Tulane University that night. And it happened that morning. I was at work. I think I was in the gymnasium. I wasn't working out, but I was probably on the phone talking to somebody. When it occurred, the first aircraft hit the World Trade Center building there, and they over the loudspeaker, in the Customs Air Operations there, came the call: all law enforcement officers to the war room immediately. And whenever we hear that, we know something's really bad. So we went in there, and the war room has these huge TVs, kind of like a CNN, Fox News main room there. We had all these different TV screens and computers and people and a lot of hubbub. And so we're standing there, in our flight suits and our guns, and our holsters, our ankle holsters and our shoulder holsters and around the waist holsters, which will make Tina happy and her husband happy, Slick. And we were looking at the TV screen there, and we saw that first building, on fire, the hole in the side of that building. The caption read, "Small aircraft flies into World Trade Center." And I was standing right next to Rock Ryan, a Marine Corps guy that was an interceptor pilot with U.S. Customs. And I looked at him, and we saw that hole in the side of that first building, the South Tower. And I said, "Rock, that doesn't look like a small aircraft to me."
No, it didn't.
No, and we stood there, and then on live TV, I can't remember how many minutes it was afterwards, watched the second airplane slam in the side. I believe the North Tower was the second one hit.
Yeah.
And then we knew we were at war. We knew exactly what had happened. We knew who Osama bin Laden was before the rest of America did.
That was the first words out of my mouth. Yeah, those were the first 2 words out of my mouth when someone at work turned around and said, "Some kind of plane just hit the tower." And I pulled it up online and saw the picture and said those two words out loud. And, of course, everyone who worked with me, this was, 2001, everyone who worked with me said, who?
Yeah, they didn't know.
Yeah, he's a well-known person now, but nobody else in that building knew who the heck that was.
I think Monmouth College really trained you well.
Meredith, stop it.
Oh, I keep forgetting where you went to school. Where did Stacy go to school? Clemson?
No, I wouldn't be hanging out with her if she did.
Oh, okay.
Just FYI.
Clemson is in North Carolina. Wait, no, it's in South Carolina. What's the difference?
You are just going to get yourself in trouble, and you know what? I'm going to make you take another break just for that. We'll be back in 2.5 minutes so the doc can wrap up for the day before I kill him. We'll be right back.
This is JD.
And this is Stacy.
Join us Tuesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, for Game On. Remember,
lock up the children and the old folks.
Game On, the home of liberty conservatism.
Where no one is safe, and no one is spared, not even the hosts.
Oh, that was supposed to be a spin cycle. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. We love you anyway. Right round, baby.
Self-monitoring
right
Ebola radio strikes again.
Anyway.
Anybody see the host monkey? Where's the host monkey? Where's the host monkey? For God's sake, I need an antidote. Just do your rant. Let's pop out of the segment.
Find us on Twitter at JD and Stacy.
You're listening to K98Talk.com.
I've seen this happen before. And there's a full moon out tonight. I'm a fool, but you can't fool me twice. Deception just like a disguise. When I reveal myself in the light, stick around and you might pay the price. Enough with the questions, it's time that we said our goodbyes.
I knew that this wouldn't be easy.
Try not to tie it down.
Now nothing you say can appease me.
If you wanted to go, then you would have been gone before now. The darkness abounds.
Okay, Doc, wrap us up and get us ready for next week.
Okay. Now, please understand, Dr. A, there is nothing, how should I put this, morally superior about being a sheepdog. It's just what you consciously choose to be as a human being in society. And also understand this, that a sheepdog is sort of a funny little critter. He or she is always sniffing around out on the perimeter, checking the breeze, barking at things that go bump in the night, and yearning for that righteous battle. That is the young sheepdogs yearn for a righteous battle. I purposely said the word yearn. Us older sheepdogs, we're a little bit wiser, older. We move to the sound of the guns, however, right along with those young ones when it's required. Here's how the sheep and the sheepdog think differently. The sheep pretend the wolf will never come, but the sheepdogs live for the day when the wolf arrives at the door. Again, after the attacks on September 11th, 2011, most of the sheep, that is the good American citizens, said, "Thank God I wasn't on one of those airplanes." It's a different story with the sheepdogs, the warriors. They said, "Dear God, I wish I could have been on one of those airplanes. Maybe I could have made a difference. When you are truly, totally transformed into being a warrior and have invested yourself into warriorhood, you want to be there. You want to be in a position to make a difference. Remember, there's nothing morally superior about being the sheepdog, the warrior. But the sheepdog does have one advantage, I think only one, and that is that he is able to survive and actually thrive in an environment that destroys 98% of the population. There was research conducted a few years ago with individuals who were convicted of violent crimes. These convicts were in prison for serious predatory crimes of violence, assaults, murders, and killing law enforcement officers, which is happening right now, left and right, with ISIL, ISIS, whatever you want to call it. We call them Muslims that are coming trying to kill the United States. Right now in my mind, I'm picturing that black guy, I think it was in Philadelphia, wearing his little white, whatever they call that Muslim garb, running across the street in the crosswalk, shooting at that cop, innocently sitting in his cruiser.
I know it's not what they call it, but I call it the smock.
Yeah, well, the smock. Yeah, luckily the young police officer did not die. That's in my head right now. The vast majority of these cons said that they specifically targeted their victims, by body language, slumped walk, passive behavior, and a lack of situational awareness. Something I always teach my pilots when they're flying. You got to have situational awareness. Know what's going on around you in your cockpit during a certain period of time, and be able to also project your situational awareness 10 or 15 minutes down the road. What am I doing now in my life, in my airplane, in my car, in this Publix shopping center? How will that affect me 10 or 15 minutes down the road? That's better situational awareness than just exactly what's happening right now. Think ahead, people. Think ahead. Those convicts, those ones that are convicted of all these different violent assaults, they chose their victims like the big cats do in Africa when they select one out of the herd that is least likely, least able to protect itself. Now, some people may be destined to be sheep, and others might be, how should I put this, genetically primed, if you will, to be wolves or sheepdogs. I think that's true, Lou. But I believe that most people can choose which one they want to be. And I'm proud to say that more and more Americans, and I see this all the time, are choosing to become sheepdogs. As a professor, I used to get questioned all the time about my students. And I was telling them, at least in my classes, that I thought more and more of my students, even the mega liberal ones, who never walked out of a lecture with Dr. A, are becoming more properly educated about the truth. They're not being fed, they're still being fed a bunch of liberal hogwash lies, and these liberal professors trying to convince them these lies are the truth. But it seems to me that it's likely that more and more of these college students are starting to realize that they're being fed these lies by these mega liberal professors, and they're starting to question what they're being told, which they should do anyway. Use that rational thought process, the analytical part of their brain, to find out the truth on their own, and not just be turned into a communist robot.
Yeah,
and I like that. And unfortunately, the communist robots that are still out there are becoming more deeply engulfed and ingrained into that cultural Marxist diatribe and that crap, and the political correctness, which is going to kill the United States if we don't nip it in the bud. Several months. By the way, before we get into this, I was teaching that night at Tulane University, and I went to class. This was on 911, and I told the students that I wasn't going to hold class that night because the United States was under attack. Some of them didn't even know this. Some of them did. And I told the class, look, I will stay. We're not going to do lecture tonight, but I will stay, and we can have a little round table forum if you choose to. We can talk about what's happening, and I'll let you express your opinions. I'll be like the moderator. We'll talk about it. And every one of my students that night at Tulane University, they're in New Orleans, stayed. And we talked, by the way, Tulane University is where rich Northeastern parents send their dumb second kids. No, I'm kidding you. I'm just teasing you. They send them to Meredith or
No,
Cornell.
they send them to Duke.
They send them to Cornell.
They send them to Duke.
Dumb second kids go to Cornell. No, I'm kidding. So they stayed, and I listened to them, and it was the moderator. I let them look each other in the eye and discuss stuff. And I never throttled my students back or try to stifle them. You just give me a good argument, and I'm going to be on your side as far as you being able to talk. So I believe in the Constitution and your right to talk, First Amendment, okay? And then afterwards, I told them, before I left, I let them go that night, I said, here's what's going to happen over the course of the next several months. You're going to have American patriotism skyrocketing on both sides of the political continuum. People are going to love the United States of America. We're going to start having red, white, and blue shirts and cakes, red, white, and blue, and people are going to stand up and say this, that, and the other in support of the United States. We had members of both houses of Congress on the steps of the Capitol singing God Bless America, holding hands, black and white, Republican, GOP and people on the left, Democrats, all coming together. And that's what you saw temporarily. And that's what I told them. I said, this is going to be temporary. It won't take very long for those people that hate the United States of America to go right back into their mantra, their cultural Marxist, political correctness, hating of America, and it's going to happen. And that's exactly what occurred, Lou. Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, of course I do. We were fighting it by the end of the semester. That was my last semester in school, and by the end of the semester, we were fighting back against already the fallback into the sheep position. It was fascinating.
It was 6 or 7 months after the attack on September 11th, 2001. That Todd, I think his name was Beamer. Todd Beamer was honored in his hometown in New Jersey. I think it was Cranberry, New Jersey. Mr. Beamer, as you recall, was one of the men on Flight 93 over Pennsylvania who called, I believe it was his wife, on his cell phone, and I think he called the operator at United Airlines and informed her about the hijacking. Mm-hmm. When he, on that airplane, learned of this, the 3 other passenger planes had been used as weapons of mass destruction, Todd is the one that sort of dropped his phone right there in the aisle at that airplane and said, let's roll. And authorities believe that was a signal to the other passengers, the other sheepdogs on that United Airlines flight, to confront the terrorist hijackers. In 1 hour, Lou, we had a transformation that occurred amongst those passengers. You had parents, athletes, business people that were on that plane. In 1 hour, Lou, they went from being sheep to sheepdogs, and together they rose up to fight the wolves. Edmund Burke, I know I'm a political science professor, and I believe in political theory, political philosophy. Edmund Burke wrote Reflections of the French Revolution. That's actually called Reflections of the Revolution in France. He taught us that there is no safety for honest men, and he meant men and women, except by believing all possible evil of evil men. One of my heroes, Dr. Hannah Arendt, taught us that the more heinous the behavior is, the easier it is for the rest of us to believe that it never actually happened. She taught us this in the origins of totalitarianism. Why would human beings put other human beings into an oven and cook them, kill them? Why would they gas them? Well, that actually occurred, Lou, although there's a lot of people that out there trying to apologize for the Nazis saying it didn't occur. It did occur, people. Don't listen to these stupid people that are trying to convince you otherwise.
As long as there has been history, there's been people who try to revise it.
Yeah, exactly. Because it challenges their political opinion, their base of power.
Or their agenda.
Their agenda, their talking points, their narrative. Here's the point I like to emphasize, especially to the thousands of students, police officers, and soldiers that I speak to each year. In nature, the sheep, by that I mean real sheep, they're born as sheep. In nature, the sheepdogs are born that way too. So are the wolves. You know what, Lou? They didn't have a choice. But you are not a critter. You are not an animal. As a human being, people, you can be whatever you want to be. My dad taught me that from the very beginning. A submarine officer that he was in the United States Navy for 20 years, Cuban Missile Crisis. He said to me, Randy Arrington, you can grow up to be whatever you want to be. Yes, sir, 3 bags full. And he's absolutely correct. He was also correct about some other things that have occurred in my life that I wish he wasn't correct about. Like when men get to be 50, certain things start happening to them. I wish he wasn't correct about that.
TMI, Doc.
Losing your hearing and your eyesight going. I'm wearing glasses right now.
Okay.
I had to wear glasses in my life. I've had 20/10 vision as a young naval aviator. Now I have to wear glasses to see up close. So you're not a critter. You can be whatever you want to be. It's a conscious, moral decision for you personally. If you want to be a sheep, you can be a sheep, and that's okay. But you must understand the price that you pay for that decision. When the wolf comes to your door, you and your loved ones are going to die if there is not a sheepdog there to protect you. If you want to be a wolf, you can be a wolf. But we sheepdogs are going to hunt you down, and you will never have rest. You will never have safety, trust. You will never have true love, because we're going to come after you.
There you go.
But if you want to be a sheepdog, people, and walk the warrior's path, then you must make a conscious, you must make a moral decision every day to dedicate, equip, and prepare yourself to thrive in that corrosive, toxic moment when the wolf comes knocking at the door.
All right, 30 seconds. Get us out of here, Doc.
You may not know this. Well, if we got 30 seconds, I just want to say this. We'll pick this up next week and finish this series. Let freedom ring. God help us, people. And always be bold and speak the truth in your daily life, and then endure those inevitable consequences. And thank you for listening to Office Hours with Dr. A. Have a good next week, people. We'll see you next Sunday.
That's right. We'll be right here next Sunday, and you can catch us on WNJC out of Philadelphia, 1360 a.m. on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. See you next week.
Office Hours on WNJC is brought to you by the Conservative Commando Radio Network.
If you want to work until you keel over, have less of everything in retirement, or give back more of your hard-earned money to the stock market again, then just ignore me. But if you'd like to protect the money you save, receive a steady, predictable retirement income, and enjoy financial security for as long as you live, then listen to this. You can download a free report that reveals the wealth-building secrets Wall Street and the banks don't want you to know. You'll learn how you can get guaranteed growth, safety, and real prosperity without risking your money in the Wall Street casino, and how to get the money you need when you need it, simply by asking for it. This is the best way to have a 100% secure retirement, and know your money will last as long as you do. To learn more about this method, and to get your free report, go to 29security.com. That's the number 29security.com. 29security.com. Go to 29security.com.